we also on Friday like to give you, if Nancy was here, we love to do In the News with her, but we still have In the News for you guys today. Just a couple of short stories before we have Vince. I think the biggest news story about autism in the media this week was Wentworth Miller. That Wentworth Miller is a television actor, movie star, probably best known for his recurring role in Prison Break. And, Traven and I were talking about this show yesterday, and this was not a show that would have been my kind of show, although I watched it because isn't this ironic? I ran into a dad who, this was right around when this started, was right around when my son was being diagnosed. And I ran into a dad who worked on this show and who had 2 kids on the autism spectrum. And so I was talking to him, and he had this message of hope and about all these things that his kids who were older were doing. One of them had just gone to camp, and I was like, there's a possibility that my child could go to camp at some point. And so I was following snowshoes in the snow prints in the, yeah, you know what I mean? Snowshoe prints in the snow. And he said, you got to watch this new show I'm working on, Prison Break. And I wanted to be kind and supportive of an autism dad. So I watched that show. And look, it was a great show, but I still have nightmares. It's not my kind of show. But Wentworth Miller played this very calculating, calculating, very intelligent guy who goes into a prison, gets convicted of a crime, and goes into a prison, and he's covered with tattoos, and each tattoo has clues he needs to know so that he can get his brother broken out of prison. Oh my gosh, this show, the heart palpitations that it gave me. But anyway, Wentworth Miller, a very respected, well-known actor. And this week he came forward on Twitter and with a statement and said, basically, I have been diagnosed on the spectrum. It's a really thoughtful, well-written letter that I encourage everyone to read in its entirety. You can find it anywhere online right now. We're showing it in the, I don't know, are we showing it in the Hollywood Reporter? But it's everywhere. If you just Google Wentworth Miller, you'll find his statement, which is not very long. And there were so many things in it that really resonated with me that I loved, that I thought, wow, deeply thoughtful and respectful of the community, that he said, this was something that first he was unofficially diagnosed. And then he moved into self-diagnosing. He did some reading and went, ooh, I think I recognize me in there. And then he went for an actual clinical official diagnosis, which I gotta say, super appreciate that he said that, because I think it's sort of the arc that people go in. I've interviewed a lot of adults on the spectrum who've gotten their diagnosis as adult, and usually it starts with somebody says something like, have you ever looked at this? Like, you strike me a little. An unofficial diagnosis, then they kind of go down the rabbit hole and they read a lot and go, I think I just met myself for the first time. And some people stop there. And Wentworth Miller talks about that. And he says, here's one of the things that I want to say to the world is, having just gone through this process, that it's really way too difficult. Thank you, someone who has a mouthpiece, for saying that, because he talks about how it's really exhausting. You got to find somebody who will do the diagnosis. It's really expensive, it's arduous, and it's time consuming. And it's really probably something that most adults don't get to the point of, which causes a lot of contention in our community, because we have people who will come forward and say that they're on the spectrum. And then upon further investigation, we find out they're self-diagnosing, which may be accurate, but I think we all feel a little bit more comfortable when we have confirmation from somebody who is clinically able to diagnose that, yes, this person qualifies and meets the criteria. Because a lot of us I think we're all somewhere on the spectrum, but a lot of us don't qualify for the diagnosis. Some people do. And what that means is that that person is affected by this to such an extent that it requires a special designation, right? And if I said not that long ago, I said, I have sensory issues, but I don't qualify for a diagnosis of an autism spectrum diagnosis. I can have empathy. I know that sometimes it interrupts my day or causes me to not do something, but I can make the rest of my life work around that. And there are people who cannot. And that is different than it interrupting my day. And I think we all need to have a little bit of awareness about that. So I love that Wentworth Miller specified and said, yep, I went through this process. And by the way, this is hard to do. I can see why people don't go and get the full diagnosis because expensive, arduous, time consuming. Yeah. So I absolutely love that. And I also love the fact that he said, I'm not going to come out guns blazing and tell people everything there is about autism because I'm new to this party. And I'm going to other people who have been telling these stories more often. I just thought it was really thoughtful. I thought, and you know what else he said? There was a part of his statement where he thanked people for anyone who had been patient with him, even not knowing what he was going through. I felt like it was a statement of saying, thank you for recognizing my humanity and allowing me to be myself. And being kind about that, which made me really warm and fuzzy for the fact that he has met people in his life who have been that. Isn't that what we want everybody to be? For everyone, diagnosis or not. But I thought that was particularly lovely that he took the time to thank those people. And I hope that as the days and weeks and time goes on, I think we're going to see more of this. I think we're going to see more prominent people coming forward saying, yep, I took the time, I got a diagnosis, and everybody starts to go, oh, okay, well, I had an interaction with Wentworth Miller that maybe I didn't understand at the time, but this puts it a little bit more in perspective. I just want to take a second to say, though, there's lots going on right now. I went to a Ed talk at the Ed Asner Family Center the other day online that was all about animation and how all of these studios have animation and voiceover, and all these studios have committed to making sure that they provide opportunities for people who are differently able to have the opportunity to audition, the opportunity at jobs, the opportunity to perform. But given that opportunity, we're not guaranteeing saying a percentage, we're going to hire a certain number of people, but we're going to guarantee that the opportunity is there for someone to come in and show their talents. I thought it was great. And there was a voiceover talent that was there. And there was two people from Disney, one from casting, one from that oversees animation. And they were talking very realistically about where they're trying to get to and how they're making accommodations. I thought it was really lovely. And I think and there were also two actors that were there that we've had on the show before that are people who, actors on the spectrum who have done voiceover work and done other acting work, right? So it was great to have that all represented. And I just, it's made me think about the last 5 years that we've gone from a time when, we weren't seeing any representation, authentic representation. First of all, we weren't seeing representation, right? Then all of a sudden we were seeing characters that had autism, right? And then it went from, well, why aren't we giving autistic actors, an opportunity to play these roles, right? And then there was this moment in time. First, it was just a little peep, but Kobe Bird, who we've had on the show and who we absolutely adore, suddenly he was cast on the show Speechless as a kid on the spectrum, one of the friends. And it was like, look at that. Look what just happened. Was a character written that has autism, and they actually hired a kiddo on the spectrum to play him. Look at that. And, I don't know whether he was on one episode or two, had a couple of lines. So it was this little boop, but it was significant. It was like the boop that went and spread out. And the next thing you know, Kobe's got a speaking role on The Good Doctor. And now we've got boop. And then somebody else, Alex Plank, gets a speaking role on Good Doctor. Now we're boop, boop. And then all of a sudden it was like boop, 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 right? And all of these things happened as a result of it. And now we've got all these actors playing individuals on the spectrum. And I was like, well, you know, the next fence we got to get to is that actors who are on the spectrum can play people who are neurotypical. Well, it turns out that that's been happening for a long time, but it was happening without anyone being aware. And I want to venture to say that 5 years ago, if I don't think that if Wentworth Miller was diagnosed 5 years ago, I don't think he would have put out a press release about it. But he can today because it's totally accepted. It's not going to prevent him from his next acting job. And isn't that a great place to be in? So I just want to thank everybody. And I want to remind everybody that we didn't have this 5 years ago. And I want to thank Kobe Bird because, you know, he was a 15-year-old kid who just, and I want to thank the folks at Speechless. And then ultimately, I think Netflix has been one of the greatest contributors, and the folks at Netflix, and I include The Good Doctor in that because they're related to the Netflix people. I want to thank them for how much they've prioritized this, because we've created an environment in which this can happen. And I just think it's going to lead to other better things. But I also want to thank Kobe Bird for just being a brave 15-year-old and going in and being such a professional. You can find him now on Lock and Key, and he's lovely on Lock and Key. And, you know, we look forward to seeing season 2 of Lock and Key. We're, you know, really looking forward to that. So thank you to all of our actually autistic actors. And thank you to Wentworth Miller for being brave, stepping forward, and you know, not overstepping, but doing it brilliantly and lovely. We absolutely adore that. And I love Wentworth Miller all the more. Liked him before, love him all the more now. Okay, moving on to our next news story that we have. Want to give a shout out to the University of Iowa, who they're involved in a new project. And I want to make sure that I bring this up. I have no idea where it is. Hang on, I've lost my place and everything. All my screens are going crazy. I have no idea where I am. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.